My parents handed my boyfriend to my sister. Like he was a prize. She's steadier, more successful, they said. I left broken. Years later, at my own gala, they saw my husband and went hail. The house lights were still up when I saw my father's funeral suit in the third row of my own theater, and for one full second I thought I was hallucinating. I wasn't. My mother was next to him in the pearls she only wore for weddings and photographs. My sister Rachel was beside her, hands folded in her lap like she was at church, and standing at the end of the row, hand already extended in that easy, practiced salesman's reach, was Brandon, the man I used to fall asleep next to, now wearing a wedding band I'd never seen and a blazer that cost more than his old Honda. He didn't recognize me yet. Not really. He was looking at the founder, at the woman in the green dress who ran the label his new company was about to beg for money. It took him a full 3 seconds to connect the dots. I watched it happen in real time, watched the polite, hungry smile on his face die a slow, public death. 6 years earlier, my own father had looked me in the eye at Sunday dinner and handed my boyfriend to my sister like he was passing the mashed potatoes. I want to tell you how I got from that dinner table to this stage. It's not a short story, but I think you'll want to hear all of it. I need you to understand my family before I tell you what they did, because on paper it doesn't sound like much. Nobody hit anybody. Nobody screamed. My family's cruelty was quiet, efficient, and dressed in good manners, which somehow made it worse. My mother, Carol Ashford, assigned seats at her own dinner table. Every Sunday, handwritten place cards in blue fountain pen ink, laid out before we arrived like it was a wedding reception instead of hot roast. My father, Richard, sat at the head. My sister Rachel sat to my mother's right, closest to the good light, the seat where you could be seen. I sat by the stove, closest to the kitchen, close enough that when the gravy boat ran low, I was the one who got up without being asked, refilled it, and set it back down in front of people who never once said thank you. I was 25 that year. I ran the soundboard and did mixing work for a tiny studio in a strip mall off Aurora Avenue, the kind of place that smelled like solder and cold coffee. My family called it a phase, the way you'd describe a rash. Rachel was 27 and a pharmacist at a hospital in Bellevue, and in my house, that job made her a person. My job made me an inconvenience they hoped I'd grow out of. My boyfriend at the time, Brandon Weller, sold insurance. Not well. He missed quota 2 quarters running, though I only found that out later from a mutual friend who couldn't resist gossip. My mother worked on him the way water works on stone, not all at once. A comment here, a comparison there. A man needs stability, Brandon. A man needs a partner who understands sacrifice. She said things like that across the dinner table while looking at her wine glass, never at me, like I wasn't the one dating him. I watched him change in slow motion over about 8 months. He started agreeing with her more. He started looking at Rachel the way a cold man looks at a fireplace, not with love, just relief that something warm existed in the room, and it wasn't going to ask him to build a career out of nothing with me. Then came the Sunday in March that ended it. Pot roast. My mother's good china, the one with the gold rim she only used for holidays, and, apparently, ambushes. My father cleared his throat in that specific way he had, the sound that meant he was about to deliver a verdict, not a comment, and set down his fork. She's settled, he said, not looking at me. He was looking at Brandon. She's steady. Rachel's a person you build a life with. Nobody asked me to leave the table. Nobody had to. The conversation simply moved on around me, like I'd already gotten up, like my chair by the stove had quietly emptied itself. My mother started talking about wedding venues in Woodinville. My sister smiled down at her plate in the specific way people smile when they're trying not to look too pleased in front of the person they've just taken something from. I didn't cry. I didn't throw anything, though God knows I wanted to send that gold-rimmed china across the room. I finished my water, folded my napkin, and drove home. 4 months later, I got a group text. Rachel and Brandon engaged. 3 heart emojis. My mother replied first. Finally, some good news in this family. I packed 2 suitcases and my studio monitors into the back of a 2014 Corolla with 140,000 miles on it, and I left Seattle for Austin, Texas on a Tuesday without telling anyone I was leaving until I was already 3 states away. Austin humbled me fast. I slept maybe 5 hours a night for the first year, working the door at a live music venue on Rainy Street by night and cold calling every small studio in a 50-mile radius by day, trying to get anyone to let me touch a mixing board again. I learned things nobody in my family had ever bothered to teach me: how publishing splits worked, what a mechanical royalty was, the difference between a work-for-hire contract and one that would actually let an artist keep something of their own when the relationship ended. I read contracts until 3 a.m. with a highlighter in one hand and gas station coffee in the other. For the first time in my life, nobody was measuring me against my sister. It turned out I was a fairer judge of my own worth than my mother had ever been. 18 months into my new life, I ran into Eli Brooks at a songwriter's showcase in a converted garage on the east side. I recognized him before he recognized me. He had the same slightly hunched way of standing near the back wall, like he was bracing to be told to leave, because he had been, once. At my mother's table, 4 years earlier, when I'd brought him home as a friend from a music program, not even a boyfriend, my mother had reached past his plate for a serving dish and said, without any real venom, like she was stating the weather, "People like you don't sit at this table." She'd meant it about his prospects. He wrote songs for a living, or tried to. In my mother's world, that made him worthless, the same category she eventually put me in. He still had the lyric sheet from that dinner. He showed it to me over cheap beer that first night in Austin, the paper gone soft at the fold bolds. In the corner, in my father's blocky handwriting, where he'd apparently grabbed the page off the table to make a point. Get a real job, kid. We built Underdog Music out of that garage over the next 3 years. Literally the same garage at first, before we had 2 employees, then 8, then a real building with our name stenciled on frosted glass. Every early mix we ever cut had, buried somewhere under the final master, the sound of a motorcycle idling outside that garage door, because Eli refused to let us fix it. He said it reminded him why we started. We built the label on one rule, the rule that came directly out of both our worst nights at that dinner table. We don't strip artists for parts. Every contract we wrote, our lawyer, Denise Okafor, 11 years in entertainment law, the woman who'd walked away from a firm that repped major labels because she was sick of writing contracts designed to trap 19-year-olds, reviewed personally, line by line, with the artist sitting across the table, not just their manager. 5 years in, Underdog had 11 acts, 4 gold singles, and a reputation in the Austin scene as the label that actually paid out on time. I married Eli in a courthouse on a Tuesday afternoon with 2 employees as witnesses. We didn't tell my parents. There was nothing left to tell them. We planned the 5-year anniversary the way we planned everything, carefully and a little defiantly. Full theater downtown, 700 seats, press credentials for 4 outlets including 1 industry trade paper that actually mattered. Our whole roster performing short sets. Eli would close the night with the full band version of the song called Underdog, the one built from that garage motorcycle rumble, played live for the first time with strings and a horn section instead of a cracked amp. 6 weeks before the show, a pitch deck landed in our general inbox from a small artist management outfit calling itself Weller Talent Partners, asking us to fund and co-sign their roster of unsigned acts. I didn't recognize the name Weller as anything but a common one. I want to be honest about that. If I'd connected it immediately, I might have handled the whole thing differently, and I'm still not sure whether I'm glad I didn't. Our head of A&R, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Priya Chandrasekhar, who'd spent 9 years scouting talent for a major before coming to us because she wanted to work somewhere that didn't lie to 19-year-olds about ownership, flagged the contracts within a day, doubled commission rates buried in Section 4, a publishing grab disguised as an administration fee in Section 9, recoupable expenses that would have kept any artist signed to them in debt for years. It was exactly the kind of paper Underdog existed to fight. Hard pass, I told her, but set the courtesy meeting anyway. At the gala, I want to look him in the eye and tell him no myself. I've always believed people deserve a real answer, not a form email. That instinct, I'll admit, is one of the only things I inherited from my mother that I actually kept. I never opened the founder's personal file. I didn't need to. A company's paperwork tells you everything you need to know about the people who wrote it. 2 days before the event, his assistant emailed asking to bring 3 additional guests. Family, the email said, there to support him on what she called a big night for the company. I approved it without glancing at the names. I had a 700-seat theater to run and a live horn section to rehearse. Guest list approvals were the least of my problems that week. The gala opened at 7 p.m. sharp. I walked out in a green dress under stage lights I'd once only dreamed about from a folding chair in a strip mall studio, and I said the words I'd said in my head 1,000 times before I ever had a stage to say them from. Please welcome the founder of Underdog Music, Tori Ashford. I'd dropped my father's name years earlier. Ashford was my mother's maiden name, the one thing of hers I'd decided was worth keeping. Quick pause. If you want more stories like this in better quality, my Spotify's linked in the description. The first act played. Applause, a standing ovation for our youngest signee, a 19-year-old from Corpus Christi who cried on stage and didn't apologize for it because we taught her she didn't have to. During the first intermission, I crossed the lobby floor to knock out my 3-minute courtesy no to Weller Talent Partners before the second half started. I had the rejection already worded in my head. Polite, final, no room for a follow-up email. And there they were. My father, in the same charcoal suit he wore to my grandmother's funeral 11 years earlier, like it was the only formal thing he owned. My mother in her pearls. My sister Rachel, a little heavier around the face than I remembered, standing slightly behind everyone else. And Brandon Weller, I understood now, the Weller of Weller Talent Partners, hand already extended toward me in a handshake meant for a stranger. Founder's smile locked into place like he'd practiced it in a mirror on the flight in. I watched the smile die in real time. I watched 4 people do the exact same math in the exact same second and land on the exact same impossible answer. My mother's hand drifted up to her pearls, the way it always did when she needed a second to compose herself. My father sat down hard on the lobby bench behind him, like his knees had simply stopped agreeing to hold him up. Rachel made a small sound I can only describe as the noise you make when you step off a curb you didn't see. They'd flown across the country. Denise later confirmed it was a same-day round trip from SeaTac, booked in a rush the day after Weller's assistant requested guest passes, to help pitch a struggling talent company to a stranger who might save it. They had landed instead in my theater, at my party, asking my company to bail out the son-in-law they'd chosen over me 6 years earlier. We had no idea, my mother breathed, arms already lifting for a hug she assumed was still owed to her. Tori, honey, we always believed in you. I didn't step into it. You're a guest here tonight, Mom, I said. That's all this is. I turned to Brandon before he could recover his footing. The contracts your firm submitted aren't something we can move forward with. Priya can walk you through the specific terms if you'd like the detail, but the short answer is no. I kept my voice level, professional. The same voice I'd have used with any founder pitching bad paper. It cost me nothing to be polite. It cost him everything to hear it in front of my parents. The house lights flickered, the 2-minute warning for the second half. I excused myself and walked back toward the stage, and I did not look back to see whose face was doing what. The final set of the night belonged to Eli. It always did. It was his song, his label as much as mine, his motorcycle rumble buried under every early record we'd ever cut. The host, a local radio personality named Marcus Diallo, who'd covered the Austin scene for 14 years and had watched Underdog grow from a garage act to a real player, stepped up to the mic for the introduction. To close our 5th anniversary, please welcome the co-founder of Underdog Music, the man behind the song that started it all, Eli Brooks. The crowd rose before he played a single note. 700 people on their feet for a man my mother had once told, mid-dinner, that people like him didn't get to sit at her table. I watched her face from the wings. I watched the recognition crawl across it slowly, the way it does when you're trying very hard not to believe something obvious. The boy from her dining room, the lyric sheet she'd probably forgotten existed, the one my father had scrawled "get a real job," kid across like a verdict, like a place card. Then Marcus leaned back into the mic. One more line before he handed the stage over. Eli also happens to be married to our founder. My father's mouth opened. Nothing came out of it. In 29 years, I had never once seen my father run out of words. I watched it happen from 30 feet away in a green dress, and I felt something in my chest finally, quietly, unclench. Eli played Underdog full band, strings and horns swallowing the old motorcycle rumble we'd kept buried in every mix for 5 years. The same song that used to just be 2 guitars and a busted amp in a garage that smelled like motor oil. My mother stood frozen in the front row of the one room in the entire country she had never once been able to buy, flatter, or maneuver her way into. A room that had nothing to do with pharmacist salaries or steady insurance careers. A room built entirely by the 2 people she'd once decided weren't worth a seat at her table. Weller Talent Partners folded that November. I heard about it secondhand, the way I hear most things about my family now. Denise mentioned it had come up in an industry filing she'd hold for an unrelated case, a dissolution notice, nothing dramatic. Brandon went back to selling insurance in Bellevue, according to a mutual friend who still, inexplicably, keeps me updated on people I no longer think about most days. My mother has texted 4 times since the gala. I've answered once, a short, polite message letting her know Eli and I are well. My father hasn't texted at all. I think in his own way, that's more honest than anything he ever said to me across that dinner table. Rachel called in January, not to apologize exactly. My family doesn't really do apologies, they do explanations dressed up to look like remorse, but she cried on the phone for a while, and I let her, and at the end of it I told her I hoped things worked out for her. I meant it. It surprised me how much I meant it. Underdog signed 3 new acts this spring. We put a clause in every contract now, something Denise and I wrote together after the gala, a line that has nothing to do with royalties or recoupment. It just says every artist gets a real seat at the table, every time, no exceptions, no place cards required. My mother used to tell me people like me always come crawling back eventually. I think about that sometimes, usually late at night in the studio, headphones on, mixing someone else's song into something they'll be proud of. She was almost right, in a way she never intended. I did go back to that room, eventually, on a stage, in a green dress, with my own name on the marquee, and my own husband closing the show. I just never had to crawl.